Okay. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
You?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
So I'm not quite sure what went wrong here.
No problem, but as long as it works now, right?
So Michiel, I've sent him a message, and then there's another person who was here before. Yeah, I've done my best to let everyone know that they can join this. So I was expecting at least 2 more.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I'll just have to keep it to a few.
Sure.
Did the link also work, or was it only via the email?
The link worked. The second link worked. The first one did not.
Okay. So something changed there.
Mhm.
And oh well, the Polish. There's a Polish person who wanted to join the call.
Mhm.
Let me see.
Hi guys.
Hey.
Hey there.
Hi Michiel.
Hi, I'm Michiel, yes.
Gleb, nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, Gleb.
Just going to try and add one more person.
Mhm.
I forgot his name. Daniel. Yes. Okay. That's that. So theoretically, some people might still join via YouTube, but I don't think that's going to happen. So
Okay.
thank you for the new link there.
Okay. Let me know when you would like me to start, and I'll start.
Yeah, I think. Let me see. Maybe I can send Matthijs still a message just to be sure.
Sure.
I think it's just good to start talking. You know, if people still join, and that's good.
I wanted to make sure that you folks have a chance to join, and then I'll do a brief presentation, and then which we can record and then put on YouTube later, and then we'll have a conversation about this stuff, because the main thing is not recording, but the main thing is to have a good conversation and answer questions.
Good.
Link. Yeah, maybe you guys can start introducing yourself. I also don't really know you well yet, Michiel. We've only already met online, I think.
Yeah, so I'm Michiel and I'm from the Netherlands. I'm 21 years old. I've recently finished my Bachelor of Business Administration, actually last week. And well, since I'm 16 years old, I'm on a path to, or with the question, what is the most effective way to do the most good in the world? And only 6 months ago, I came across effective altruism. And well, I worked in a company, or in several companies that and organizations, non-profits that have the goal to do the most good through entrepreneurship, which is the B Corporation movement. And now I'm together with 2 of my brothers. I'm starting a company myself, and we're also doing projects to well, to realize sustainable aquaculture in developing countries, or basically really low-income countries like Seychelles and Sri Lanka. And well, that's what I'm doing now.
Cool.
Anything to ask, or is it clear?
No. Thank you for your introduction. Ramold, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so at the moment, the main thing here is Sheer Huimakers and I are working on coordinating growth for effective altruism in the Netherlands now, which sounds really big, but we're just like a small group now, and we're just thinking of ways to bring more awareness to effective altruism principles and get like more committed people involved in effective altruism movement here, and we both really see potential there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like just some like in multiple areas, like in terms of the way people donate money now. I think we're like number 4 on the list. Oh, hi Sanjay.
Hi.
I think I'm hearing some.
Hey Sanjay.
Would you, let me see, maybe you could mute your microphone except if you talk. I think it's probably echoing back from your speakers into the microphone. Possibly. Thank you.
Yeah, Sanjay, yeah, if you could mute the microphone except when you talk, that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's no problem at all.
Cool.
Yeah, so I was just saying that I'm involved with Effective Altruism Netherlands with Sheer Huimakers, which is trying to grow to draw awareness to that. And for the rest, I'm working on, like, I'm also involved in humanism. And I just had a local young humanist meeting. Yeah.
Cool. All right, thank you for your introduction, Ramold. Sanjay, would you introduce yourself? And you can should unmute your microphone this stage.
Thanks. Yeah, so I've been involved with the Effective Altruism movement maybe a couple of years now, and I've got a non-exec role with Effective Altruism London, and which is just, as you may know, going through the process of having a staff member. And so for the day job, I was previously earning to give, but now I've moved to social entrepreneurship, so starting up a charitable giving platform which is kind of got a bit of an impact edge to it. So using a database that I'm developing that will convert X pounds into Y lots of impact, but doing that for lots of not very EA charities to try and reach a broader base.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, thank you for your introduction. And yeah, so mute your microphone if you don't mind. All right, and let me introduce myself, and then I'll give a brief spiel about EA marketing. So my name is Gleb, and I'm the president of Intentional Insights, which is an organization devoted to marketing effective altruism and rational thinking to a broad audience. So the rational thinking of what we do, we call that our cognitive altruism, where we market broad ideas. But we focus on marketing, a lot of our focus is on marketing effective altruist themed ideas to a broad audience, and that's what I'll talk about today. I've been involved in the EA movement for some time, and I'm really passionate about getting the EA movement engaged with a broad audience, somewhat like Sanjay, and really getting the ideas out there without necessarily spreading the movement itself, so getting the ideas out there. And why is it important to get the ideas out there without necessarily spreading the movement? Well, the movement is composed of people who are really hardcore, who are really committed to this stuff, who really want to think hard about effective giving now and where they can make the most difference, spending their life on it, spending a lot of time and energy on it. And that's not necessarily the right thing for most people. And we have to realize that that's okay. I think something we don't realize as a movement, the EA movement, is that it's okay for other people to not be doing what we're doing, not spending so much time and energy on this stuff, thinking hard about where to give and spending so much of our energy on it. So So what we at Intentional Insights do is kind of fill this really neglected area in the EA movement, which is spreading ideas from the movement about effective giving out there, about how can we do the most difference with our dollars, our pounds, our euros, in such a way as to make the world a better place. Because many people want to do that. They want to make the world a better place, but they don't necessarily care about spending so much of their time and brain resources on this stuff. And again, so that's what we're trying to get these messages out there. And we do that through publishing articles, doing video casts, doing podcasts, and so on, and in broad venues. We had publications in Psychology Today, Time magazine, we have publications in Huffington Post, and so on. Really broad venues, getting messages out there to a broad audience. So, and what I want to talk about is how to do that. So I'll just give a brief spiel on this, and then we'll have a discussion. Now, the really crucial thing there are three crucial words in getting your message out to a broad audience, and that's emotions, emotions, and emotions. So you want to make people feel good about what you want them to do. And that's the fundamental basis of what we want to do in spreading ideas about effective giving out there. We want to cause people positive emotions around giving effectively. So right now, the fundamental problem is that people have positive emotions only around only around the giving itself. They feel good when they give. When they give their time, when they give their money, and that's all. They feel good about it. They don't really think about the outcomes of their giving. They don't think about the long-term impact of their giving. And that's a problem, because it's the long-term impact of their giving, the actual effectiveness of their giving, that we want them to think about. So what we will want to do, what we should try to do, the message that we should try to spread out there is to get the long-term impact, to get them to think about the long-term impact of their giving. What difference are they making in the world? And cause them to feel positive about this difference, cause them to feel good about really doing the most effective thing, doing the most cost-effective thing per dollar. And so this is the broad takeaway, the crucial single thing I want you to remember from this Skype. If you don't remember from this call, if you don't remember anything else, the crucial thing to remember is that you need to cause people to feel good about doing effective giving, about caring about the outcomes of their donations and thinking it through well and hard. We can talk about the specifics and the mechanics of it, but that's the big message, that's the big takeaway that I want you to take away. So that's my really broad spiel. Now I want to open it up for questions from anyone. So anyone who has questions, please go ahead.
Immediately related to that. So you're focusing on effective giving. Like, is that because you think that's the easiest way to get people to not spend too much extra resources, but do have like more impact? Or like, I mean, other reasons why you're not looking at things like career, or just thinking of if there's any other areas where you could do similar things? That's a question.
Sure. Good question. So an important aspect of marketing is the kind of ask that you're asking people to do. And ask is the specific steps, the specific actions. How do you want to change people's behavior and change their thinking? Now, people are highly unlikely to change their careers when they just hear about effective giving. That's a much more complicated thing to ask them to do. That's a very high ask. So when you first expose people to the idea of, they have no notion, they have no concept of the consequences of their giving. When people give, they generally give because they hear stories. They hear emotions. They feel pulled by their heart to give to something. You know, they hear about a poor, starving child in their neighborhood, you know, from some nonprofit that gets the message to them, or they hear about the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which is like, you know, oh, we give a child a chance to be a fighter pilot for a day or something like that. And that's the kind of messages they hear, and they give a donation. They don't actually they don't think about the effectiveness of their giving. This is the message we want to spread. We want to spread the message that people really need to think about the effectiveness of their giving, and they need to feel good about giving effectively. They need to feel good about it. So we're spreading the emotions. Asking them to change their careers is a much higher ask. And that's something that comes quite a bit later, after people have already engaged with the ideas of effective giving for a while. So more broadly, on a meta level, on a broader level, there's a concept called inference gap. So inference gap, the inferential distance. So the inferential distance is the distance from where people currently are in their thinking about something to where you want them to go. And it's crucial to take them along small steps in this inferential distance. So crossing very small inferential gaps, your message, whatever you're telling people, can't have too large of an inferential gap, or they won't follow you, or the vast majority of them won't follow you. So to get people to cross this inferential gap, you need to have small asks. You need to connect to where they are and take them along slowly to where you want them to go.
So this is also like the foot in the door technique that you mentioned before, I guess.
Yes, that's right. This is one. So all of our approach to marketing is informed by research on how to market most effectively, and one of the common strategies called the foot in the door technique, where you first get a small message out there. Research shows that after people are willing to do a small thing for you, they will, and they feel invested into the idea, and they feel invested into you, into your message, and they're willing to do larger things later on. Other questions?
So I have one question, because I think society, we can divide it into all these different groups in the different effective altruism levels. For example, social entrepreneurs are already having their career and their life's purpose on doing socially well. And don't you think it is then wise to, for example, start with the social entrepreneurs and test our ideas of spreading the movement with them, and that we have much more focused on one group, for example?
So I hear you. I think there is certainly some benefit to having niche groups. So for example, Raising for Effective Giving, which is a group I really like, focuses on poker players, and that's a fine approach to target niche audiences. But if you target niche audiences, you're going to learn the wrong lessons about targeting the broad market. This is not the same thing at all. So if you try to spread ideas broadly, you shouldn't spread them in the same way that you spread them to niche audiences. There's a concept called market segmentation in marketing, which is considering which elements of the market you're targeting and talking to them in a certain way. When you're talking to people who are social entrepreneurs, there's going to be a very specific way you talk to them and a very specific language you use. When you talk to poker players, it's the same thing. When you talk to startup founders, there's an organization called Founders Pledge, which is trying to get startup founders, and this is not social entrepreneurial startup founders, this is the founders of Silicon Valley startups, technology startups, to donate a portion of their money to charity once they sell their startup to a larger company. You talk to them in a very specific language, in a way that's different from when you talk to a broad audience. So there's certainly some benefit in targeting in your marketing to a specific audience, to a specific niche, and that's a quite fine task and activity to pursue. The same concepts apply, speaking to their emotions. So when you speak to poker players, or when you speak to startup founders, when you speak to social entrepreneurs, you need to think about what moves them. What motivations do they have? How do you make them feel good about their giving? And go along that route, apply the same principles. The principles that I'm talking about are widely applicable to any group.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Gleb, I just wanted to add that I mean, this sounds great actually, and
Yes,
sounds very much in line with all of the thinking that I've been having about SoGive, my own project. And there the aim is, like you say, perhaps to change the mindset so that people don't just see their donation as I gave £100 to charity, but rather to have inbuilt into the donation process something to make it easy to see that re-expressed in other ways. So re-expressed in terms of some sort of measure of the impact that that donation has made. And in order to drive people to the site, which is obviously a key challenge for any startup, actually, it involves a marketing campaign that's, like you say, entirely focused on emotions. And I'm particularly trying to focus on the emotion of pride. And so I'm actually creating a Facebook group called Proud Givers that spreads memes around this notion of pride and promotes those using Facebook advertising and marketing techniques to drive people to that. One of the other things that I wanted to do, and I don't know how to do this, and this is the hard bit, was another idea which I really liked, and I saw this in one of the Effective Altruism pages, is a page where you're allowed to blow your own trumpet. And so, you have the the social norm that you're not allowed to tell people that you've done a good thing and invite praise. That social norm does not apply. And I thought that was a great idea, and so I created a Facebook page called Blow Your Own Trumpet that is intended to allow exactly that, but outside of the EA space. And this is particularly useful for my app because the idea is then people will make donations through SoGive, and then they will be able to post the impact of their donation onto this page, and hopefully there'll be a community of people there who will like their post and congratulate them on what they've done. The hard bit for me is I don't quite know how to. I know how to get people onto the Proud Givers page because I can create memes there and get people to start liking those and driving them to the site with that. But I don't know how to get people to start using the Blow Your Own Trumpet page.
Okay, thank you for the question, Sanjay. It sounds like a really interesting and potentially impactful project. So we've recently created the Effective Altruism Accomplishments Facebook page. It's called EA Accomplishments, a Facebook group for people who want to share about their accomplishments and talk about that. So as all of you are EAs, you all are invited to join that. So it's EA Accomplishments. And by the way, you're also all invited to join the EA Marketing group. So it's Effective Altruism Marketing on Facebook. So check that out. So in terms of blowing their own trumpet, I think it's going to be hard for people outside of the EA movement to deal with the social norm and accept the social norm of blowing their own trumpet as a thing. I think it might be good to have something like, if you donate to one of these groups, you should post to this page, or Sanjay, and then that would effectively be a way of social signaling. And that's a way of doing so. I think it would be hard to change norms that's not within the effective altruism community. One of the nice things about the effective altruism community is that we are used to doing weird things that seem counterintuitive. Like, for example, it doesn't feel pleasant to appeal to people's emotions to us. It's not a pleasant thing. We are more people who like to appeal to our brains and other people's brains not the hearts. But we can recognize that, okay, if the research shows that appealing to people's emotions is what's going to be most effective in spreading the effective altruist message, then that's something we should do. So we can recognize that and we can go forward with it. And that would be something very challenging to spread in the broader community. So I would say having a smaller ask than the blow your own trumpet page might be good. You know, encouraging people to post and share with their friends that they made a donation or something like that might be good, or to share it on the same page, the Proud Givers page, so to have that community be all located on the same page. Okay. Other questions?
So before we go on to other questions, I just wanted to mention that I might have to leave fairly soon just for some other meetings. So that's me meeting my other diary commitments and not some kind of spurn of the call.
Thank you for mentioning that, Sanjay. All right.
So, okay, let me see. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask my own one.
Well, okay, I'm not sure if this has already come up in this call, but the thing I usually notice when I talk to people who aren't part of the effective altruist / rationality movement, and I try to tell them about effective altruism, what will happen is when I actually notice, when I mention the fact that it's a movement, people often sort of shy away, probably scared of maybe cultish-ish things, and well, I'm wondering, Gleb, what you think about if you talk to these kind of people, what are the things you stress and what are the kind of things you avoid? Do you try to not mention that it's a movement? Do you just focus on the things they do, or do you mention it at the end, or what are your opinions on this?
Good question, Tim. So when I talk to people about this, I try to first, it's something I briefly mentioned earlier, which is the concept of what kind of an ask do you give. So ask is, what do you want people to do? So describing their actions. People, when they hear about this effective altruism movement, which involves thinking hard about their giving and spending a lot of time on it, that's a thing that repels many people. And if people feel like they have to do this or nothing, they would prefer to do nothing, or many people would prefer to do nothing. This is why I prefer to talk about effective giving. So actions that involve people giving effectively and thinking about what are the actual consequences of their giving. So thinking that through and not actually joining a movement of any sort, just spreading this idea. Because the problem is that people tend to not think about the consequences of their giving. They think they do all the good they need to do simply from giving the donation or volunteering or something like that. And if we already get people to think that the good they do is the kind of impact they make on the world, that's a huge change in their mindset. So that's the kind of change in their mindset that it's very good to get to. Now, once they have this idea and they internalize, this is not a very kind of, it's not nearly as big an ask as joining a movement, but it's an ask. It's like a significant change. And so after they internalize this idea and they move with this idea and they think about this idea for a while, then you can kind of see if they would be open to effective altruism as a movement. And if not, then not, that's fine. And that's not having it seem like they need to join the movement in order to feel good about themselves. Remember, it's all about feelings and causing people to feel good about themselves. You should give them permission to feel good about themselves only if they do effective giving. Because many people are not appropriate for joining the effective altruism movement. They're not ready to think hard about their donations. And that's fine. That's not a bad thing that they are not ready to really be very, very focused and spend a lot of their energy on thinking hard about their donations. If we can get people from their current state of not thinking about their donations to just letting their donations be guided by high-quality charity evaluators, that's great. I mean, that's a huge win for the world. So that's what I would say on that matter.
All right, so you would just nudge them towards like GiveWell or those kind of institutions and see what they have to say about it.
Yep, GiveWell for poverty, animal charity evaluators for animal issues, and so on.
Okay.
I generally am careful about talking about X-risk unless they are
Yeah.
prepared to hear about that, because that's like more in the weird direction. So
Right.
I try to avoid the more weird areas of the effective altruism movement and causes unless I sense that they are prepared to hear about that.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
So, Gleb, I think you actually wrote an article once about the Make-A-Wish Foundation that you used to donate there, but then at a certain point, I think like a friend told you that that was not a good area, and then you changed your mind. What was the original reasoning for you to choose Make-A-Wish Foundation, like that choice at the time? And was it like a real leap in thought, or had you already thought about other things before that, but then suddenly everything came together? Just interested how that actually went.
Sure. I mean, before I got engaged with the effective altruism movement, I used to donate more to things that people told me about and that seemed like a good idea. And, I mean, on the face of it, if you don't think about it hard, it seems like a good idea and emotionally engaging, to give a child a very nice experience of being a fighter pilot for a day or going to Disneyland or something like that. So without thinking hard about it and actually seeing the other options and the opportunity costs that come with donating to Make-A-Wish Foundation versus, when my friend told me about, Against Malaria Foundation, that by donating to that, I think the Make-A-Wish Foundation takes about $50,000 to fulfill an average wish, whereas Against Malaria Foundation, that's like under $3,000 to save a child from malaria. So that's essentially 17 children and 17 lifetimes of dreams against one day and one wish dream fulfillment. So kind of thinking about that is a very effective way of making a much more rational and informed choice. And that's a way that people can hear it. Now, the way I communicated it to you is a way that is very present to our emotional self, our elephant, what's research calls the system one elephant, kind of the emotional self, the lizard brain, versus the rider, kind of the rational self, and so on. So comparing the
Just to clarify, it's from the Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, like intuitive fast thinking.
Yep. Yep, intuitive fast thinking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So comparing the envisioning 17 children in a lifetime of dreams versus one child and one dream, that's the way that our elephant, our system one, can very intuitively grasp the difference. Now, it can't intuitively grasp the difference when I say, well, it's 50,000 versus 3,000. That's not a way that our system one works. It doesn't work with numbers very well. You probably, as I said this, 50,000 versus 3,000, it doesn't resonate nearly as strongly as emotionally with you as 17 children and a lifetime of dreams versus one child and one dream. So that's another example, that's a concrete, specific example of appealing to emotions. How do you appeal to people's emotions? So thinking always about people's emotions and what they will resonate with is the way to go forward with spreading these messages to a broad audience. And it's not only a broad audience. If you think of, we talked about spreading it to poker players or startup entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs or someone. These people also have their emotions, and they will also resonate with these same messages, but they need to be presented to them in somewhat different language. For each group, they have to be presented differently. Other questions?
I have my own list of questions in my head, so
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so this is not really a practical question, but like I think one of the things with which I'm still trying to grasp my head around with movement growth, I mean, there's a couple of people who've done like some intense studies into this, and there's some documents which you've also linked to in your articles about movement growth and the risks of that there are actually risks connected with growing fast, and there's a difference between getting like people to know more about something and actually getting them committed or have like a positive impression of it, a positive inclination. So I'm wondering, like I can see how using effective giving helps here, because trying to get everyone to join effective altruism movement might dilute it in the sense that you have people who do not have a clear idea yet about what EA is, but will actually join discussions and things like that, so it might dilute it. But are there any risks that you see with your strategy that you think, oh, maybe reaching out too broadly, broadly quickly, will shift the focus from the more committed EAs to effective givers in general, or like maybe we can't handle so much growth in this area? Like, are there any things you think, oh, these are like risks either in strategy or in implementation that it's good to consider, to take into consideration?
Cool. Good question. So when I think about risks, I think there's a lot of risks in spreading the effective altruism movement from the perspective that you talked about, kind of the movement being flooded by people who are not value aligned and who are not ready to think hard about their giving, and who would produce more noise than signal, who would have to be educated about this stuff, and who would feel, how do I say this? They either produce more noise than signal, and they kind of don't give a good reputation of effective altruism to people out there who are like, what's an effective altruist? Well, this guy's an effective altruist, but when you engage with him, he doesn't have a good ideas and doesn't have a good impression. So that there's danger there. There's another danger in spreading the effective altruism movement of having to spend a lot of time by existing movement members in educating people about all the various complex aspects of the EA movement itself. So that distracts energy from thinking hard about what are the best causes to prioritize. And another danger in spreading the effective altruism movement is when people go to EA meetups and they are met by complex questions and complex thought patterns, that they feel alienated and just drop out and don't do anything regarding effective giving at all. And so that's why I strongly favor encouraging effective giving as opposed to encouraging effective altruism, and seeing effective altruism not presenting effective altruism, joining effective altruism, as something to really feel good about. So again, speaking to people's emotions, not presenting effective altruism as something to feel good about. Just saying that this is a thing that you can do if you really are committed to thinking hard about this stuff and to learning this stuff, and you're ready to spend the time and the energy on this. But you don't have to do it and still be a good person. You can be a good person just by giving effectively. So this is a matter of identity, where you're taking people, what the inferential distance is. So there's a much smaller inferential distance from where people are now to effective giving. And I think everyone can cross that distance. Everyone can give more effectively than they're currently giving. So everyone can do that. Now, far from everyone can go to effective altruism, and that's fine. I don't think they should. And it's going to be hard to absorb it. Now, regarding effective giving, I think that there's no problem in absorbing people into effective giving. All people have to do is look at, GiveWell or ACE or Animal Charity Evaluator recommendations to decide how to give effectively. Heck, if they want to do something different, let's say they care about environment, and there are some groups around effective altruism and environment causes, but they don't have currently standards for which is the best charity. They can push the group that they favor, the environmental group that they favor, to be more transparent about their finances and to focus on cost effectiveness. And that's great. If we can get nonprofits to be more cost effective, that's already a win, and use data and evidence as opposed to stories to appeal to donors, or more data and evidence, let's say it that way. So I think I see very little risk in spreading the ideas of effective giving, because all of that involves is just people hitting EA meta-charity websites more and giving more money to things like Give Directly and Against Malaria Foundation and the Humane League. So in fact, one of the things that Intentional Insights is working on is to create a website called givingeffectively.org that will host articles about effective giving and videos about effective giving, and also have some links to effective altruism for people who are really devoted to thinking hard about this stuff, but not cause people to feel like they need to do that. It's fine if they don't, and that's quite okay and acceptable. So in short, I see relatively little risk to the strategy of spreading effective giving, other than the potential of effective charities having more people to deal with who call them and say, hey, what are you guys about? Which I think they would be happy to do.
So one follow-up question. I don't want to take too much of these time with these questions. So do you see this as either complementary to attracting more people who are actually going to be committed to the effective altruism movement, or that it's a different focus, that they're going side by side? How do you see that? Because there's other people who are really trying to talk with people more like really intellectually inclined or altruistically inclined, and really trying to get them to be the really effective people that they can be.
Great question. So, and again, this goes back to the inferential gap issue. All people, including intellectual people, including potential future effective altruists, need to first cross the inferential gap to thinking, like I did. I didn't used to think about the long-term cost-effectiveness impact of my giving. I was like, okay, this seems like a nice nonprofit. It has a nice story. It seems like it does good work. Sure, I'll give it some money. That's the way I used to think. And now I'm a very dedicated, passionate, effective altruist who has an organization that does this stuff and who does these calls. And if any one of you, by the way, our organization can always use more support in terms of volunteers and funders. You can go to intentionalinsights.org to check it out. And from that perspective, you need to talk to people who are you need to first move people toward the idea of effective giving. So the need to think through the consequences of their giving and the impact of their giving, and be passionate about this kind of cost-effectiveness idea. Then, only then, after they have crossed that inferential gap, can they really move on to effective altruism, and that would be a small component of those people. To move on to effective altruism, people have to really spend a lot of time, again, being quite intellectual, thinking hard about their giving, thinking about cause prioritization, getting involved in weird topics including things like X-risk, including things like wild animal suffering, and including things like asteroid defense sort of things. These are weird topics that most people would have a hard time engaging with and would be repelled by if that's the first thing they hear, or most people would be. So right now, what our movement does is just present everything at once, kind of about effective altruism, and that repels a lot of people who might potentially be good effective altruists later onward. Whereas if we first do effective giving and then go to certain select people who are effective givers, who we identified beforehand as like, okay, this seems like a person who might eventually make an effective altruist. Let's see if they're interested. Oh, hey, they're not interested. It's okay. Or, oh, hey, they're interested. Let me talk to them about these kind of effective altruist stuff. And this is all part what I mentioned about the effective altruist marketing group. This is all part of a collaboration between Intentional Insights and the local effective altruism network, which is a network of local EA meetup groups around the world. And both they and we want local EA folks to spread the ideas of effective giving broadly, because that's a big difference that we can make. Then from that, we can filter some select people who might be value aligned to join effective altruism. So it's definitely a good way of getting people to join effective altruism, but it's not the only thing that we should be thinking about. We should be thinking about the impact of our change in the world. And getting people to join effective altruism movement is only one way of doing so. We should all be oriented toward marketing, or let me not say it this way. Not all of us. There are some people who might be better prioritize their skill and resources elsewhere. But there definitely should be, each local EA group should have some people within it who are dedicated to marketing effective giving broadly in their community. And that's definitely a good way of attracting some people to the EA movement. So I would say it's more like the effective altruism is standing to the side of effective giving, and because effective giving is not a movement, it's ideas, it's a set of ideas. Now, from the people who adopt this set of ideas and internalize it, we can then get some people into the effective altruism movement. But I think it's really beneficial to think of effective altruism as a vanguard, as an elite movement, and one that's not necessary to join at all. All right, that's my spiel on that.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Just before, I think Tim wants to say something. I want to be careful of your time, Gleb. Like, so if there's a point where you say, okay, well, past that time, please let us know, and we'll.
Yeah, I have about 15. I have about 15 more minutes.
Okay.
All right, Tim, go ahead.
Oh, well, you're kind of putting me on the spot here.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure I had anything to say, but let's see, can I figure something out? Did you have any more questions, Arnold? Because not necessarily.
Sorry, I thought you wanted to maybe say something.
The other folks.
Daniel wants to ask a question via chat. So he would like to hear what you mean, Gleb, with a value-aligned person. So I think just being more specific about what it means.
Happy to do that. Sorry for using jargony term. Value-aligned is a person who you can anticipate has values that would make them a good fit with the EA movement. This is a person who is likely, who you can estimate as likely to think hard about their giving and change their mind based on new evidence. And the person who is emotionally capable of engaging well in a group setting. So you don't want people to come to a EA meetup and then be real jerks because they would push out other people from the EA meetup. So a person who has good emotional intelligence, and a person who has good skills in rational thinking, and a person who also, of course, this is a prerequisite, this is a necessary but not sufficient, who cares about making the world a better place. So I would say those three things: person who really cares about making the world a better place, person who has good emotional intelligence skills, and person who has good rational thinking skills. Those would be both necessary and sufficient to join the EA movement.
like just reply via the chat. I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing your name right. I'm just saying Daniel. Oh, Alex is also saying something. No camera news. Oh, okay. Yeah. All is a bit of a paradigm shift to me. Yeah, I can definitely understand that.
Yeah. Oh, so Alex says that this is for him a paradigm shift, and I understand it's definitely a paradigm shift, and it's not easy. Again, I want to emphasize that for us, people who are more intellectually oriented, it's really not easy to do this stuff, and it's hard work. It's hard work, but very rewarding work. If you think about it, Americans give, let's just use the example of Americans, though most people here aren't. I just know the statistics for Americans. Americans give $358 billion a year to charity. About 2/3 of them do no research on charity before they give. Less than, I think about 5% of them actually evaluate carefully the impact of their giving. Now, if we can make this difference if we can change this from 5% to 6%, how much of this difference would it be? Now, 1% of $358 billion is $3.58 billion. That's much more than GiveWell is currently moving, than ACE is currently moving. If we can change this fraction by 1%, this would be huge. Now, that's $358 billion a year for Americans. Of course, the world is much larger than just Americans. So if we can change that, if we can make that difference, it would be billions and billions and billions of dollars going to effective causes. And this is why this marketing stuff, while not easy, is super important. It's super important to be able to do really hard stuff of appealing to emotions. We as intellectuals tend to fall into what's called, well, everyone does, tend to fall into what's called the typical mind fallacy. And this is a research-based term. Let me explain it. The typical mind fallacy is the idea that other people think the way we do, that they have thought patterns that are similar to us. It doesn't feel to us like emotions would appeal very well to us. But we need to orient toward the research. We need to see what the research says about this stuff in order to make good judgments, in order to make good decisions. And we know that the research says that other people really listen to their emotions much more than we do. So if that's what the research says, then that's what we need to follow in order to be rational thinkers and align with our own intellectual values and speak to people's emotions effectively. Let's see. And Daniel asks, how do you define target group to whom you want to promote the effective giving idea? So a target group is a marketing concept. A target group can be any niche to which you want to speak. You can make it very broad or very narrow. For example, a target group can be, we talked about poker players. Those can be a target group. Social entrepreneurs can be a target group. Let's see, Indian women can be a target group. And then you would pick some, so what you would do with that is then you would pick channels that speak directly to Indian women. You would learn what values they align with, what associations are important to them, look at some of their cultural heritage and target them. The same thing with, one of the things that Intentional Insights is doing is promoting secular giving games, and Remelt is doing a great job of typing out the links here and also engaging with secular giving games. So I'm sure he'll type out the link to the secular giving game right here. So Remelt is collaborating on that. So secular giving games, giving games are workshops where people get together, talk about their values for their giving, talk about what metrics they use for their giving, and then talk about a couple of pre-selected charities, and then the pre-selected charity would get a donation of $10 usually, sponsored by an outside party, usually the Life You Can Save. And that's an organization we collaborate with to promote effective giving to a broad audience. And that's a great workshop. It's a great activity. I love it because it actually gets people to sit down and think about their giving. It makes them face their values and align their thinking along with their values, along with their compassion, with their heart. So it's a very effective sort of activity that does this exactly what we want them to do, get them to think about the impact of their giving. And the secular giving games can be done with anyone. Now, the secular giving games are specifically targeted to secular people. They use secular language, you know, oh, we can make heaven on earth right here, as we as secular people know that there is no God above, and so we need to make the heaven on earth kind of thing. So this is the language. So I'm talking about the language right now. How do you use language? How do you appeal to people's emotions? You hear that, you know, I don't know if you're secular or if you're not secular, but you can hear how that resonates with the kind of secular people. Or let's say if I wanted to talk to religious people, you know, you can use phrases such as God, or let's say one of the groups we engage with is Unitarian Universalists. So they include secular people and religious people, and they use spiritual language. So a way to present giving games to them is, well, the spirit moves us to act in compassion with our values and do good in giving our gifts to the world around us. So this is language that would resonate with them. So using language that resonates with each demographic is what you want to do. And that language tugs at emotional ideas, emotions, and beliefs they have inside their heads. And that's the essence of what you want to do. You want to focus on their emotions and speak in a language that resonates with them. Other questions? I have about 5 minutes.
I'll just add to that before there's another question. I think it's also a lot of these things you say actually make logical sense. I'm not sure if I would personally say heaven to earth to, for example, a humanist, but like it's a way of wording something that's also really something you mean most of the time, at least. I think you're really trying to get people to think differently about what they're saying. That's my opinion, at least. And anyone else? Don't just feel free to ask your question. We've got still 4 minutes left. Okay, let me think. So maybe the last 4 minutes. Maybe it'd be nice, Gleb, if you could actually talk about concrete actions that people could take here themselves. Right now,
sure.
This Hangout.
Yeah, so concrete actions that you can take. If you are in an EA group, you can get them to check out the intentional insights of, say, Hackpad, which Remelt can type out here, and that describes a lot of links to marketing stuff. How do you think about marketing EA concepts and ideas to a broad audience? How do you actually do that? How do you engage with it? And that will help you think of these things through and see what appeals to you, because there are lots of tactics you can use. So you can write articles, blog posts, and we do a lot of that at Intentional Insights. You can volunteer for Intentional Insights to learn how to write for a broad audience, for example. You can engage in a lot of small actions. The EA Wiki, Effective Altruism Wiki, has a list of small actions that you can engage in to promote the effective altruism movement. You can speak to your friends about effective giving and share with them effective giving. You can go to your local EA meetup and encourage them to engage. I think the Intentional Insights Hackpad is a really good venue. So that gives them an idea of what to do and what next steps they can take around this. Now, we're collaborating with the local, with LEAN, the local effective altruism group, to create a marketing resource bank, which will have many more things that you can do. Another nice thing to do is just share links, share articles from intentional insights on your social media, because they're specifically made to be engaging about effective altruism. They're specifically made to be engaging, and other venues as well that you think the articles are engaging, target people's emotions. So getting people emotionally engaged with this. Memes are another good thing to spread on social media. So spreading memes is a good strategy, a good tactic to get people to think about this stuff. And again, face-to-face networking is always a good strategy. There is a concept called halo effect, so in psychology, and this is the idea that people associate positive things with whatever you're talking about because they like you, or whatever they like, they associate whatever is sponsored by that or endorsed by it with their own positive feelings about it, which is why you see celebrities endorsing products, or hot women or men endorse, in sports cars, stuff like that. So they want to create that halo effect between you and positive emotions around effective giving. So talking to people about these things and making them feel good about themselves for giving effectively. So which is, again, I want to come back to that theme, which is the message I started at the beginning. Cause people to feel good about themselves if they give effectively. So make them think that they are doing so much more good in the world, which is true, than others are if they give effectively, and so much more good than they previously were doing if they give effectively. So these are crucial things to convey. Speak to people's emotions and get them to feel good about it. All right.
I think we've reached our time. So I want to thank you again, Gleb, for making the time for this. I was a little bit nervous that there wouldn't be enough people in the beginning, but we've ended up with at least 6 people. And this has been very useful for me.
Cool. Okay. And again, if you find this stuff useful, I encourage you to volunteer or donate to Intentional Insights. We are currently, we have about, our costs, we're an all-volunteer organization, our costs are $42,000, and we're currently, my wife and I are currently covering around 87% of that, which is $36,000. So it's not sustainable in the long run, and we are fundraising to get more folks to sponsor this and eventually hire an executive director in order to carry this message broadly. So you're welcome to that.
Okay. Well,
cool.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a good Sunday evening.
All right. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, Gleb.
You're welcome, all.